How's it going, everyone? So this is the story of the time that I hitchhiked with a guy that was drinking and driving. Definitely a huge mistake that I made. This actually happened to me when I was through hiking the Appalachian Trail. And for those that don't know, the Appalachian Trail is a 2,200 mile long footpath through the wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains. It stretches through 14 states from Georgia to Maine. And through hikers are hikers that are trying to hike the entire length of the trail in one continuous trip, or hiking through. And I thought this would be a good story to share because I think that there's a lot that can be learned from it, and hopefully some future thru hikers out there will see this and they'll learn something from it as well. So this actually happened to me on my very last day on trail. I had just summited Mount Katahdin, which is the northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. It's a gorgeous mountain located in Baxter State Park, and September 7th just happened to be Labor Day. So that's probably why there was a lot of people out, a lot of weekenders out partying and whatnot. Also, I think it's kind of relevant to know that at this point in my hike, I had already been on the trail for 5 months, living the thru hiker life. This wasn't my first time hitchhiking. I had done it several times over the course of this long distance trail, and all of my previous hitchhikes went off without a hitch. That's a good pun right there. So all right, hold on, let me back up a bit. So when I got to the summit of Mount Katahdin, I had just finished this 2,200 mile hike. It was a very emotional day for me, just looking back at what I had just completed. It was an incredible day. And actually when I got to the summit, it was extremely crowded. There was a lot of other thru hikers that finished that day. There was a lot of weekenders and day hikers up there. And I actually stayed up there for hours. I was definitely the last one off the mountain that day. And I didn't really have a plan of what I was gonna do when I got down. And actually by the time I got down, it was getting dark. So that was probably my first mistake, was that I didn't have a plan for what I was gonna do after I finished this hike. There are campsites at the base of this mountain, but you need to make reservations for them, and being Labor Day weekend, it was all booked up. So that's 100% my fault right there, not planning ahead and making a reservation. This never would have happened to me if I would have just had a reservation at one of these campsites and stayed there, and then I could have spent the entire next day to find a safe ride down into town. So the closest town is Millinocket, Maine. It's about an hour drive away. And as I said, it was getting dark and it was actually starting to rain, and I didn't really know what to do. So I was like, I'm just gonna go to this gravel road that goes down into Millinocket, and I'm just gonna stick my thumb out and hopefully I can get lucky. And really, this is like a gravel road. There's not much traffic at all up here. I don't remember how long I waited. It was a fair amount of time. It was enough time to where people were turning their headlights on. It was dark enough now that all I could see was headlights approaching. And there wasn't many cars that passed, but I know that several people had passed me, not giving me a ride, which is cool. People get a car full of people, they just don't want to take a wet hiker down into town for an hour. So finally, this guy pulls over, and he kind of pulls past me and stops a little ways down the road, so I couldn't see him. But he popped his trunk, so I'm super excited. It's raining, it's dark, and I don't really look at who it is, and he kind of rolls his back window down, and he's like, "Put your pack in the trunk," or something like that, says something like that. So I throw my pack, it's a car, I don't remember what kind of car it was, but it was just a car, and I threw my pack in the trunk, and then I hop in the passenger seat up front. And I guess that's my second mistake. My first mistake is hitchhiking at night in the rain and not having a plan. And then this mistake was not getting a good read on this guy before jumping into the car with him. And I jump in the car, shut the door, and we just start going. And I'm already kind of a nervous passenger, even when people aren't drinking and driving. But this guy, I noticed that he's kind of not a good driver. And I didn't see the beer at first. But then as we start driving, he has a cup holder down by his door, and he pulls out a bottle of beer, and he's like, "You want a beer?" And I'm telling him about how I just completed this hike and stuff. It's kind of generic conversation when you get a hitchhike. What are you doing out here? How long you been out? All that kind of stuff. And when I noticed he had a beer and he offered me a beer, he's like, "Yeah, go ahead, grab a beer, and there's one in the cooler if you want one." And I look back in the back, and there's at least a few, maybe a couple beer bottles rolling around in the floorboards of the back seat, and I'm like, that's when I realized, like, I have made a mistake. You know how, let's say you know somebody, and you know how they are sober, and then you go to a bar or a party, and you see them and you can tell that they're drunk. That's, like, you know when somebody's drunk. But if you don't know somebody, the first time you're meeting them and they've had a few to drink, you might not necessarily know just how drunk they are. And that's the feeling that I got with this guy. Is like, I can't really tell how buzzed this guy is. And I mean, he was like kind of swerving on the road, just like making like really jerky movements. And some sober people do that when they're driving. Some people driving with them sober, like, oh man, I wanna ride with Billy over here. He's a terrible driver. You know those kind of people that are just terrible drivers. So I didn't know, maybe this is his first beer. I really didn't know, but I got the sense that this guy had been drinking not all day, but he was definitely buzzed driving at the least. So I'm like in the middle of this situation, like, I have made a huge mistake. I need to get out of this vehicle with this guy, and I'm trying not to like piss him off. He's kind of like one of those guys that's a little maybe on the edge. If you say something, like, he's maybe gonna go off on you. One of those type characters. And I'm being real friendly with the guy. Everything's cool, and we're driving. He's doing like most of the talking. You know how when people get a little buzz going on, they just start talking your ear off? That's kind of the stage he's at. So not long after we had been driving, I don't remember exactly how long I rode with this guy, but I knew that when I got in the car and we started going, I knew I wanted to get out quick. But we passed, like, I want to say it was a ranger station or a campground on the left, and I saw someone's tent set up. I don't know who it was, whose tent it was at all, but I just lied to this guy and acted like I knew who was in the tent, and I acted like I wanted to go see this person again. And actually, I was pretty impressed with myself with how quickly I thought on my feet right there, because it was like, I was lying, obviously, to the guy. I didn't know who the person was in the tent, but in that situation, it's okay to lie, in my opinion. And I just trying to keep everything smooth and play it off as that's the reason why I want to get out of the car. Not because you're drinking, because I feel like if I said, hey, I want to get out of the car because you're drinking, I don't know what this guy's going to do. Like, I don't know. But when I told him, like, hey, man, let me out. I want to go back and see my friend. I didn't know he was up there. I want to see him one more time. I made up some kind of lie like that. And he, like, just gets quiet. And not only that, he's like driving and he just like looks at me and goes, are you serious? And I'm like, it's to the point where I'm like, dude, like, look at the road. He's doing that thing from, like, what is it, the Fast and Furious or something, where they don't look, they're just staring at you while you're driving. A really dangerous thing to do. And then he just goes, all right, I just was wanting to do something nice for somebody, and was making it like really awkward. And I'm like, I'm just playing it off like, man, you meet all these cool people. You never know if you see them. I'm going off on this, and it seems to be working. He's like, okay, well, and I think I'm like convincing him of this. He slams on his brakes and he's like, well, I'm just gonna let you off here. I'm not gonna drive all the way back there. It was probably a good, like, at least quarter of a mile walk back to this place. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I'm playing it off, like, just joking, like, hey, I walked all this way. What's another quarter mile? Trying to be funny, trying to keep the mood calm. So I'm also kind of worried that maybe he's just gonna take off with my pack in the back. But also, I didn't really give a shit. I was like, I'll be fine for one night without my pack. So he lets me out of the car. I do grab my pack. He doesn't try to steal my pack. And I start walking back towards this ranger station, and I hear him drive off, and I'm like, okay, everything's cool. We got out of that situation. But then I hear him reversing. The road is like too narrow to where you can't really turn around. So I just, like, I look back, his reverse lights are on, and he's coming back towards me. And I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna have to, like, throw down here, fight this drunk driver. This day is supposed to be like an incredible day. I just finished this awesome thru hike, and now I'm gonna have to throw down with this guy in the middle of nowhere. But he just rolls his window down, and he's like, hey man, you're not gonna tell anybody that I've been drinking or driving. I've only just had a couple, and I'm about to smoke some grass, so I'm gonna calm down. And I'm like, I'm just like, no man, you're good. You're good, man. I'm cool. I'm just gonna go back here and meet up with my friend, and I'm really tired. And I just played it off, and he's like, all right, thanks, man. Have a good hike. And then he drives off, and I never see the guy again. So I'm walking back towards this ranger station. It's probably like 0.2 or something away. And I kid you not, dude, a taxi starts coming down the mountain, like in the direction I was going. And I was like, what is happening right now? So I flagged this taxi down in the coming down off Mount Katahdin, and there's another hiker in it. It's an older woman. She has just done like the 100-mile wilderness, or maybe she had done all of Maine. I can't really remember. You know, this story is like 7 years old. I should have told it a long time ago, but so the details aren't as crisp as, you know, I really wish I would have documented this story after my hike, but I'm telling it to the best of my knowledge right now. And, you know, this woman had done a short section of the AT and was heading back into Millinocket. And she was actually like ecstatic that there was another hiker that needed a ride, because she wanted me to split the cost with her. And it was an expensive cab ride. I don't know why she booked a taxi to come out there, but I had to pay, like, I split it with her too, and it was like $50 to drive for I mean, that's actually not too bad for an hour drive in a cab, but still, I would have never paid $50 to drive for an hour. You know, I would have just taken my chances with a hitchhike at hours of the day when people aren't drinking and driving. So yeah, that's how I ended up getting down into Millinocket. Everything was fine. I stayed at the hiker hostel there in town, and yeah, the only thing I kind of regret about this story that I should have done, I should have called the police on this guy, man. He definitely could have killed somebody. You know, drinking and driving is no laughing matter at all. I got lucky. Hopefully he made it to where he was going, and maybe it was just all in my head. Maybe he really just had a couple beers and was just kind of one of those characters and was just a bad driver. I mean, maybe he was under the legal limit there. I don't really know, but all I know is that I got a bad feeling when I got into the car with him, and I wanted to get out. I guess that's the biggest lesson to take away from this story, is that you should always trust your gut. You'll know when you get that feeling that something's a little off and you start feeling like you need to leave a situation, not necessarily just in hitchhiking, but around a sketchy hiker in the middle of the woods. You'll know what to do. You just always got to trust that gut feeling that you get. And I'm not making this video to say don't hitchhike on the Appalachian Trail. Again, I had been doing this for 5 months already, and everything was fine. And I have done lots of hitchhiking since then. This is the only time that I've had a sketchy situation while hitchhiking. I've done it in Australia, New Zealand, and I hitchhiked a lot on the PCT last year, and I never had a problem at any time. So just to recap, my biggest mistakes were that I didn't have a plan for after I got down off Mount Katahdin. I was hitchhiking too close to nighttime. I didn't get a good read on the situation before I got into the car, and I also just, in general, let my guard down. But that's going to be it for this video, everyone. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys learned something from this one. And yeah, be vigilant if you're out there hitchhiking around. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.